Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tate for a special spoiler discussion, a new review. We are once again entering the realm not of Westeros or TV as we talk House of the Dragon Season 2, which is now aired in its entirety of 8 episodes. Tate, how are we doing tonight?
I mean, all I can say is this is the end of the run of a lot of TV. And we've come out the other side. We've gone through all of them. It's done. We maybe will be talking a bit more films for a bit now on the channel. But this was the last series to kind of conclude out of this crazy kind of spring into summer of
It was
TV
June.
that we've had.
Everything started in June, and I've not even seen the bear yet.
No. But no, ready to kind of discuss House of the Dragon. Really enjoyed season 1, and yeah, happy to discuss season 2.
Yeah, and kind of sticking with that, people at home, we do want to hear your thoughts. This is a spoiler discussion, so please do comment your thoughts on House of the Dragon Season 2. I'm going to add this. If you have read Fire and Blood, please do not put spoilers past the point of today's finale. Just on the off chance there are people watching who haven't read it, they don't know what's going to happen. But obviously bring up anything that maybe has been in the books that was covered in the series, the first series, what you're enjoying, what you're not. So as always, please do get involved. If you like this video, we've got obviously a lot of other House of the Dragon reviews. I say a lot of other House of the Dragon reviews. A singular, we've got the season 1 review, but there's a lot of Game of Thrones reviews. That was the first show we ever reviewed back on the channel. So there is a massive Game of Thrones playlist. With so much TV, we're not been able to do weekly spoiler discussions, which is why we're doing an end of season wrap up. But if you want to find out about other videos, what else we're going to be working on, go get us on our social medias: Letterboxd, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.com, all at linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That'll take you to each of those. We're now doing more shorts, so if you want to get us on Instagram for like little wrap ups, clips from episodes, you can. We'll probably get something from this if it's good enough. But yeah, there's a lot happening. But Tate, heading over to you first. Just very briefly, I mentioned we've always watched Game of Thrones on the channel. Just very quickly, your thoughts on season 1 leading into season 2 of House of the Dragon.
So season 1 had some of the best Game of Thrones they'd had in years. And I say that as a massive fan of Game of Thrones and as a quite heavy critic of how it ended and how they handled the series in the final, I'd say 2.5 seasons. There were good moments in season 6. Season 7 was also a few maybe shining moments. And then season 8 was really just a downward spiral and just trying to get through it based on, you know, the show happening. And it was event television. It was the biggest show of its time. And, you know, it had quite a difficult act to follow up on, especially because of how badly received the finale of the first concluding kind of series was. For Game of Thrones. So it had big boots to fill. It had a lot of questions that needed answering as far as could a writing team rescue this franchise? Is it still, does it still have the appeal? And, you know, I could safely say that season 1 was successful in that. It did a really good job of, you know, introducing the characters, bringing you back into the world and bringing back in, you know, the political elements, the kind of infighting, the bickering, the different houses, the different situations that people are placed under. It brought back in the blood, it brought in the violence, it brought back in loads of dragons, as expected in a show called House of the Dragon. So it was a really strong first season. It really was. In moments, it took me back to watching kind of Game of Thrones for the first time, and I really enjoyed, you know, a good chunk of that first season. Still some kind of things that needed touching up, still some things that needed working on. But, you know, I was hoping for progression through the story and for those things to be ironed out. And that's where we bring ourselves to season 2.
Yeah, I'm in a sort of similar boat of this. And I think going back to the first season, I had like no expectation, no thoughts for it. I'm still quite a bit sour by the ending of Game of Thrones, as a lot of people will be. I know there are more people over the years that have quite liked it. The people I know that have enjoyed it more are the people that didn't watch it weekly. So I kind of appreciate that if you're binging 8 seasons back to back to back or however, it's going to not be as bad. You won't have as much expectation or hype. And you've probably heard by most of the internet that the final season's dreadful. So it's not as bad as people make out, but it's disappointing, I think, in the context of those first 6 seasons and the quality it had. And to me, the first season of House Dragon was a return to form for that. I very much liked the characters introduced, the actors cast to play them, how they structured it. Yes, there's a lot of time jumps, but it was a really interesting way. With Game of Thrones that never did a time jump at all, the closest we had to moan about time jumps was oh, they got from that place to this place quicker in season 8 compared to season 1. Half the seasons and eventually from the north to the south. So I was looking forward to season 2. I'm gonna go on the record and say I know everything that happened. Or not? That sounds so smug. I am aware of the storylines from
the book. Mm.
Yeah, no, I've not read all the book. I read most of the book, but it covers what this series is going to be. And I loved going on the Game of Thrones Wikipedia just to refresh my mind, because obviously it was 2 seasons ago, 2 years ago, season 1 came out, wasn't it? So that's my background to this. And season 2, I was given my overall thoughts that I've enjoyed season 2. I will join in with what's being spoken a lot about, that a lot of this series, I don't want to call it setup. There's been a lot of development, but it's very different to maybe how some imagined it. We've been introduced to a lot of new characters. There are some roots back to the early seasons of Game of Thrones that we're spending more time with people in certain places, storyline. People keep moaning about Daemon's not done this, Daemon's not done that. I just really want to kind of add that I disagree with a lot of that. I agree with some of it, and I think everyone's going to have different thoughts on this season, but I have to sit in an Ivy Tower and I know what is coming. So my experience watching this is going to be so different to so many other people, because, there is certainly, once you get past episode 4, I feel the speed the first half was going at from the back end of last season. People may say it's slowed down somewhat, and I understand that. And I think you're going to chat about it quite a bit.
Yeah, we definitely are. I'm overall thoughts on kind of this season straight away. Very, very strong first half, kept up the momentum that the first series had. Really engaging plot, really kind of like, it's like watching kind of the Warring Houses, but also kind of that spy work of not knowing what the other team is doing and, trying to disrupt them as much as possible without really kind of going over there and actually, knocking on their door. But then after episode 4, that's kind of the flip point in the series. I feel like the series started to go a bit downhill, just because it didn't have as much happening. I'd say there was not as much kind of political intrigue. It kind of died out. It was more kind of the houses dealing with their own things internally, and especially past that, there wasn't as much action within the series. It was more kind of conversation based drama and everything like that, and it didn't become as much of kind of the war that I thought would break out after that episode. Instead, it became more of okay, let's regroup, let's gather our chess pieces, and then I guess we go forwards from there. Before we go into kind of a larger discussion on everything as a whole, I do want to add that this is only an 8-episode run in this series.
Yes, my biggest criticism.
And it's my biggest criticism as well, because we'll get into talking about the finale, we'll go into that, but they did 8 episodes in the final series of Game of Thrones. And
was it 8 or was it 6?
It was shorter. I know the final.
They shortened 7 and 8. They shortened the final 2 seasons. I remember that.
Yeah, because they were rushing to get onto a Star Wars project that they were eventually kicked off of. So it's really interesting that this was 8 episodes as well, especially after the first series was 10 and felt really well paced out. And I don't know what it is about TV series, but you do get a lot of TV shows that go 8 episodes. You do get a lot of TV shows that go 10 episodes. But I always lean more towards 10 episodes because, especially with this, you want more content. You definitely don't want filler. And you don't want to be stuck in the area of, we're just filling out the time plodding through, which I feel like the second half of the series did feel like personally. We're definitely building to something. I get that. But I thought we'd be building to the final episode of the series, or at least the final 2 episodes of the series. Instead, we're pretty much just building to next series. And when you spend 4 episodes building towards the next series, I have real kind of quite scathing criticism over that. You should be building up to excitement within its own series, and that can sometimes spill over into the next. That's fine. You cannot go, for the next 4 hours of TV, we're setting up for something that's going to happen 2 years down the line. That's cheating the audience out of, what they want, which is entertainment in the show. I get that you need to build tension, you need to do that, but the tension gets released if there's nothing at the end of the series. People aren't going to be ecstatic and excited going into the next series with nothing really kind of in place. We got soldiers marching. I know I've gone and talked about the finale immediately, but soldiers marching to what end? If this was Game of Thrones, you'd then have episode 9, which is bonkers off the wall. And then you'd have episode 10, which is that setup for the next series to spill that energy over, which is exactly what they did in House of the Dragon season 1. So I don't understand why they haven't gone with the same formula. I don't understand why they've shortened it.
I'm in a sort of similar thing with this. I'm going to bring a comment by Charlie as well, Mr. Ashley, good friend of the channel. Season 2's been exceptional from a historical perspective. It feels more real and earnest. I haven't read the book. I don't know what is to come, so I loved it. Battle of Words and Hearts is more devastating than Blood and Bone. Yes, me and you spoke for, and I've done about how much the politics side of Game of Thrones is what I enjoyed more so than the action side of Game of Thrones. Not that I ever complained of either. My personal thoughts, I'm with you on the episode thing, and I don't want to say the same for TV, but I feel you mentioned about like no one wants to fill it, and I agree. I feel like there was this era of TV where everything was 13 episodes because of Netflix, right? Do you remember Netflix is old? Why is there 13 episodes of Daredevil? Why is there this? Why is there that? And TV should be how long is a piece of string, as long as it needs to be. Always the correct answer. And the first season of House of Dragon was done so well because they chose to go into the not backstory, but develop the leads in their younger selves, to develop multiple characters and different things. And for those that haven't read Fire and Blood, I'm not going to obviously do spoilers, but the beauty of that as a book is that it is written as a historical text, but within Westeros, and it is multiple accounts of people. So sometimes there is conflicting things like real history where you don't know what happened, and season 1 will forever have the greatest sort of thing of that, where not that are in the book, because this isn't a perspective point of view like Game of Thrones. This is they have said this is what they said at the time. Look at the history books you read at school, it's the same thing. And season 1 was like, yeah, Aemon's, bit and ate that little dragon, and boy, he had no chance. When the reality of the show, how the show presented it, was he lost control of Vhagar, and by that killed his nephew, technically, half nephew, and that begun the Dance of Dragons. And I really enjoyed that. And that was quite a disturbing way to end the season in a great way, because suddenly here is war. And the first half of this season, I'm not saying I just want a war every week. I'm like Charlie in the comments. We want to have the development and how they built up to stuff in the early episodes. To have different characters in scenarios, retaliation to the death of Luke, getting things wrong with Dame. We'll get into all of this, but I really feel that this should have been 10 episodes. And it's really tricky to not sympathize with it, because I appreciate they want a four season show. I feel like we're going to get 3 and 4 will be 8 episodes each. I feel this will be their thing now, that we do the 8 episode seasons. I know that the spin-off show next year is going to be 6 episodes, maybe, or 5. It's going to be a lot shorter. My own frustration with this is because I know what is coming, it immediately feels like, not when the episode finished, I was waiting for it, and I know we could look at budgetary things, we could look at production value, CGI, all that sort of stuff. I really want to flag this, and I'm not criticizing the strikes at all, because this was the only show unaffected by the strikes. They were writing it before. The cast, or the production was on British equity contracts, so that when the actor strike started, this show couldn't stop. There hasn't been strikes and other things. So this show, to my understanding, has been probably the biggest Hollywood production of the last year and a half within strike territory. And it was unaffected. It was shooting here, as they've always shot in the UK, or like neighbouring places like Croatia, Spain, as and when. But it's really frustrating for me. I know I'm going to be excited for season 3, because I'm going to be like, oh my god, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to happen, and I'll make some predictions at the end, and I'll just say the story points. I won't say spoiler things, but I feel like they're really trying to make it last 4 seasons. But I am somewhat worried that season 3 now might be, I'm not calling it a rush job.
Dragged out, or they've got too much. They got too much stuff to get through now.
I think season 3, there is a risk they have a lot to get through, or season 4 could be shorter based on where they choose to end seasons, etc., etc.
The
I'm
counter
worried
argument,
that
I guess the counter argument is that it's not a complete retelling of the books, and they could add or remove things.
yes, and they can switch the order of certain things, and they might switcheroo a few things, which I'm really happy with. I like, again, seeing the historical textbook being challenged within a TV show. They've changed a couple of things. George R. R. Martin's praised some of those types of things as well. Some people are crying about the most minute things, and this is like a dragon can't bond to someone that is not dead. So by not killing off the son of Rhaenys and Corlys in season 1, they shouldn't have been able to have the dragon rider bond with him. Now, that's kind of a point, but at the same time, man, it's fictional. They've pretended to kill him off, and he might have died off screen in all the years that have followed anyway. Who knows? I don't care. So some people moan about too much, and I've really, and this is where Lord of the Rings comes into this. Do I dare to bring Lord of the Rings adaptations? Some people gloss over the changes made to Lord of the Rings from the books because they grew up with the films. They were familiar with the films before they were familiar with the books. So as they got to an older age and realized, hey, this Hobbit adaptation is going to be a bit different. Yeah, it's an adaptation. But they're happy to gloss over something they didn't know before. Whereas now, the moment they change something that you are familiar with, it's like gun blazing. And Lord of the Rings, I always feel, is in that. Harry Potter, to a point, is in that. It's just, I guess, human instinct at times that you find out through a film. Therefore, that's your connection more so than the book. And then it's this whole weird online presence. And the reason I'm citing those is because Game of Thrones made a lot of changes. Yes, ultimately, the problem with Game of Thrones is that if I'm really honest, the series shouldn't have been made until the books were done. But my own personal opinion is the author can't moan about the series not being the way he wanted it to be, etc., when he didn't finish writing the books. That when was season 8, 2019? 8 years after it started. I'm not making you rush it, but there's very credible things with Game of Thrones from a production standpoint. And I'm not going to also moan at George R. R. Martin. Take as long as you want, mate, but maybe don't moan about changes if you didn't finish it. Some breaking news. Ryan Condor just announced House Dragon will conclude season 4. Season 3 will start production next year. Okay, that's good to know. That sounds about bang on. 4 seasons as we thought. Thank you, Charlie, for giving us the news. I was terrified that I almost misread that as House Dragon will conclude season 3. My brain was about to blow up.
That would have been like, whoa, okay, so much to get through.
That'd have been like a 20-episode season.
Yeah, Jesus.
But yeah, so sorry, where I was getting Lord of the Rings is that some people are fine with change, but they'd like to pick and choose what that change is. Whereas House of the Dragon, because the Dance of Dragons has been written from a different perspective from start to end, there are people who do not like things. But you don't know what those things happened because they're not incredible. They're two people arguing. What happened here? I say this, he says that. So even if you're picking a side, you don't know who's right. George R. R. Martin knows who's right, but he's chosen not to write the answer. Meanwhile, House of the Dragon as a show can also enter the same logic. Hey, it was written like this, but that's a historical point of view. And I like to say this: history is history is written by the winners. Look at any textbook you read at school. You're reading it from the winners' perspective, not the losers. You're going to get little bits on the losers. But this is what House of Dragon, I think, is doing really well, is that it's an unreliable narrator in Fire and Blood. I've gone so far off topic, Tate. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair. No, I actually have a question because, of course, I haven't read
the
Fire
root
and Blood.
of it, though. The root of it, though. I'm just going to say the name, and even the name is going to sound good enough for people at home. If this was a 10-episode season, we would have had the Battle of the Gullets. And for those that do not know what that is part of the end Christopher Nolan montage from today. It's the boats. That's all I can say. That's not a spoiler. I'm saying that's the battle. It has historical descriptions, and I know, again, for those that know, I understand why they're even more gutted it didn't make it in. But I do think this could have included the Battle of the Gullet, and I will not accept the HBO down the budget. Yeah.
One question I have very quickly before we move on to kind of talking about the actual series as a whole and going through kind of the characters and the development from season 1. Are there any accounts in the book that because it's three narrators, right? Are there any accounts where all three of them are agreeing on one specific thing?
It switches around. So certain portions of the book are written by different people, and then they will agree or disagree, but it is more the perspectives in which they're written. So, and again, that it opens it up to more, not necessarily. There's the really obvious ones that I would love to talk about haven't happened, and it involves some characters that will be later in season 3.
Is there anything that's happened so far throughout the series that all three or the narrators have completely agreed upon? They've gone, yeah, that happened, kind of.
It's weird to say. It's not almost like a history like three guys nod their head to yeah, all good. There's been things that hasn't happened. There's been things that have happened. So I think what it does, it gives the show writers just more creativity with the storytelling. That it means they can do things. And if I just bring Daemon as an example, we've had so many people angry about this Daemon Harrenhal storyline, and it doesn't have anything to do in the book at this point in time. So I'm talking from a TV production standpoint, right? If your highest billed actor in the show technically doesn't have an awful lot to do across what is going to be the duration of a season of TV, he's been one of the most popular characters from your first season. You can't just not have him appear for 8 episodes. You can't have him because it's Matt Smith. You have to find a way to include him within a story. And I get why some people are going to dislike what Daemon did this season. Daemon did nothing. He's been haunted. Well, it gave us the great introduction of Alice Rivers, who I'm very excited to see what happens down the line. But at the same time, people need to not like, oh, we know more about TV. We're better. No, it's not. It's more. You have to take into the perspective of people that are working on this, making the show, being behind the scenes. If that makes any sense, I'm just trying so hard not to say anything.
No, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. And I guess we could. Should we just knock out Daemon out the way straight away for his entire arc throughout the entire series?
Should we talk Team Black? I mean, for people at home, the way we'll do it, we're gonna go through the key character arcs. We'll start with Team Black, then Team Green. And everyone's wondering why we're doing this. Well, when we do Game of Thrones, it was done geographically, wasn't it? It would start at the north or north of the wall and would work our way down to King's Landing or south each week. And there's a very cool way to do that was your idea. That was a very cool way to do a spoiler review back in those days. Whereas obviously in this show, you don't really have the luxury of that anymore. We basically have the houses and the teams. And starting with Daemon, just bring up a quick comment by River Miss Faye. Love Daemon's Harrenhal storyline, maybe not the part of his mom, but it's been cool. Yeah. Daemon Targaryen, who, listen, you're the Doctor Who, the resident Doctor Who from the channel. Yeah. I was never massive on his era of Doctor Who. Charlie in the comments is fuming. I'm not, I'd liked him as the Doctor, but I've grown very fond of him and how his career has gone past Doctor Who. It kind of makes me respect him more as Doctor Who, because to get that out the way so young and do so much in the few years since, I'm talking like The Crown, I'm talking House of Dragon, I'm not talking Morbius, but I'm a real big fan of Matt Smith, and it's quite scary how young he still is because he was so young as the Doctor. So massive credit to him, and I think once again he's bloody great in the show, and he essentially has Dune Part 2, the character arc, today in the finale. But I very much have enjoyed him at Harrenhal. And if I go with that, I love the idea that his goal was to essentially betray Rhaenyra, take the throne for himself. I absolutely love... I forgot the name of the... it begins with D, doesn't it? The guy that's been there with him in his very swanky costumes.
So Strong. What is his... Hold on, let me pull up.
But
Sir Simon Strong.
The all-timer quote of "You're the king consort." The disgust in his voice when he called him King Consort. I absolutely adored it, and I've really loved this. But also the fact that Daemon's responsible for Blood and Cheese. The funniest. There's been 3 incredible memes of the season. The first one was the table after. I know I shouldn't be talking about memes, and Charles been brutally decapitated in the show, but when Rhaenyra looks at Daemon, then she looks at Rhaenys, and Rhaenys looks at Daemon, and then Rhaenyra looks at Daemon, and it's that guilty, like, yeah, it was me. The other sort of, who could have done such a thing, like Anakin in the temple? And it's just cut straight to Daemon, like, yeah. But yeah, what have been your thoughts with him?
So I don't think, I think he's a fantastic, phenomenal actor. I wasn't overly fussed with his storyline, and it's purely because, of course, I haven't read the books. I mean, I didn't know that he had nothing to do in the books. I just assumed that that was kind of the storyline that would have happened within the books and everything like that to go through. I think he had his great moments. I loved his kind of going insane, kind of hearing voices in the walls, and we heard that, thing about Harrenhal back in Game of Thrones, so that I can relate to that as far as a place is concerned. I loved his interactions with Oscar Tully in episode 7, and the fact that a young Tully was able to basically completely take him down verbally, at least, and put him in front of the lords of the Riverlands, and the fact the entire series he was basically trying to basically take over the throne. He was raising an army to take over the throne, but everyone really, really doesn't like him. And it's made so evident throughout this series that, all of the bickering going on, they'd probably rather just, fight him because they really don't like him. And, just the fact that it all came together with that scene, which I think is one of the strongest in the entire series, where Oscar Tully kind of calls the banners and brings them all in and, discusses basically what he's been doing in Harrenhal and making him basically answer for his crimes. And pretty much getting him to, we'll fight for you, but you've got to own up to kind of your mistakes. And I loved that scene. I really loved that. And then in the finale, we get his dream sequence, which was...
Spoiled online?
I mean, it was spoiled online. We got to see a very, very odd, weird-looking White Walker, which obviously the budget didn't go into that section of the show. And we get to see Daenerys, giving birth to the 3 dragons and all of that to come. I think the entire series, the whole plot being based around him being so small in the story, but him thinking he's so big, it's reflective. It's one of those, whilst it's happening, you do wonder why he's doing nothing and nothing's really happening with him and there's no real progression with him. But at the end, you kind of realize, okay, maybe he did need to go on this journey. And, across the entire series, he didn't get a massive amount of screen time dedicated to himself. It was maybe 1 or 2 scenes per episode. So it didn't, draw away from kind of the main kind of what everyone was focusing on during the series, which was realistically, blacks and the greens kind of, going at it. He was just going off and doing his own side quest. And, he came kind of all the way around full, and great to have him back into the battle for next season when it comes around.
Yeah, and kind of where I stand with that is when you look at his arc for the season, it's one of the best parts of the finale, not just the dream sequence, but having all the soldiers on his side. They're all ready to have him, for him to betray Rhaenyra. Sorry, like saying it. I am really... when you spent months reading Game of Thrones character names and suddenly having to sort them out, I keep getting Rhaenys mixed up with Rhaenyra. There's just so many. I keep seeing memes about too many Aegons and all that sort of thing. I get it now, but his unconventional support, which for the first time feels not earned, he feels believable. That I'm not going to breach her trust this time. I'm not going to betray her. I'm not going to do it myself. This was him having his sit-down lesson. He basically was given Game of Thrones the trailer and realized that you, as you said, you're not the main character in this. You've got a part to play, and you're going to play it. And there are teasers of what's to come.
I have seen a meme today, if we're talking memes, where it's just like, what do you mean I'm in a prequel?
It's crazy to think it technically is a prequel of sorts still, and I'm excited to see what we get with Daemon. One thing we didn't speak about, earlier, I want to talk about the intro change, not the theme, obviously. We now have the tapestry.
It's no longer the bloodlines.
Well, it's the bloodline, it's the story, but it's they're setting up a couple of things, folks, in that tapestry. So you won't know it because sorry, I sound like a dick. I used to get fuming when people used to be the ones to be like, the book's there. It's when season 4 is done and dusted. If you rewatch the intro, and I think after they killed another Targaryen, let's say Alicent's grandson, Aegon the Third, or eight, yeah, the one that season 1, Blood and Cheese, done. The next episode, I think they spill red on the tapestry to like evolve the intro, which is very cool. So I just wanted to talk about that because it made me realize with Damon that there's some things happening. And what I will say, for those people that might have been a bit good, he didn't have a lot to do in this season. Oh, season 3, you are going to get your desires and dreams and everything in between. It's you put someone on the sideline, now they're going to get back into the main event, aren't they? They're going to get the moments, and I loved the scene of him and Rhaenyra at the end. Him taking the knee, speaking High Valyrian as well, which I loved them talking about what is to come. I think to me that solidifies his story arc, and I think again when this show is being looked at as a 4-season story, his season 2 arc is going to be very important in what is to come.
I will say, I really enjoyed the new kind of intro. Never a massive fan of the one they had for season 1. I do wonder whether they will go back and on kind of release, online release or whatever, they'll go in and just change it to the tapestry and have it as a blank sheet. But
it's almost like they got no one criticized them playing the Game of Thrones theme heading into season 1, right? It was, how are you going to do an intro that's not Game of Thrones? Well, they just did the Game of Thrones theme, but the intro graphics just weren't as good, and I feel like now they've nailed it. Yeah, and I think now they've nailed it. And also with Daemon's story arc, I almost forgot we got to see the return of Paddy Considine, the legend himself, King Viserys. Loved seeing that. Millie Alcott came back as well. I liked that we got to explore him, and we'll talk about Helena in a bit as well. But there could be a bit of guilt on Daemon's side that led to her being seen. But I can't believe I forgot about the intro. But I'll be honest, guys, I watch on my lunch break on a Monday, so I put the intro on, and that is my signal to get to the fridge to take out the food, to then sit back down and eat, knowing it's done in that 3-minute window.
Makes sense. Who should we talk about next? Should we go into Rhaenyra, or should we go into Rhaenys?
Let's do Queen Rhaenyra. I mean, do you think she's Queen? Rhaenyra. She is.
Well, are you Team Black or Team Green? That's the question.
I'm Team Black. Is anyone really Team Green? And I'll double up on that. Is anyone consciously Team Green? Team Green, not because they're in love with Olivia Cook.
I'll be honest, I kind of sit in the middle here because I've never been fully on board with Team Black. I've never really been fully on board with Team Green. And of course, we have the outside eye of the entire event, going in and stuff like that. So we know that, he was talking about, Aegon the Conqueror. He wasn't talking about Aegon, the next in line to the throne, his son. Saying that, I feel like I lean more towards Team Green, which is bad. I know I'm very rare in these parts, but maybe that's because I'm
Cook?
I think I'm just rooting for the villains. I think I'm just I just feel like they're more kind of dastardly, and I like Otto, and I can get behind him as a strong leader, and I dislike Daemon as a character, even if I enjoy the acting, and I kind of dislike the kind of. I just feel like Rhaenyra's heir is her kid is whiny, and it's an interesting dynamic. I really enjoyed Aegon as king this season, funnily enough, and his performance, and Aemond is he just looks like an anime villain, and that's fantastic. So I feel like I lean more that side purely out of the fact that I just want chaos. But I've seen it online, a lot of people arguing, saying, why on earth would you support like Team Green? And there aren't many Team Greens out there. There are dozens of us. But yeah, especially after Blood and Cheese, I was kind of like, okay, yeah.
I get it. River face, but I'm Team Black, but I'll fight for the death of Helena. Yeah, everyone likes Helena. Okay, let's sort of. I can't. At least you've admitted your Team Green. I bet there's some closet Team Greens. Anyone else sees Tyrion and Viserys escaping to Essos and Aegon Larys also escaping to Essos? Didn't think of it that way. I mean, I'll talk about that at the end because that I did not see coming. But let's go with Rhaenyra, who I very. It's tricky to talk about her this season because obviously she disappeared for the episode while she's mourning Luke, which you understand. And when the wing sort of washed up on shore, that was her cementing the idea. Yes, okay, my son is dead. And I like the fact, and I know people moaned about this in season 1. I love the idea that the Prince that was promised the story of Ice and Fire has been passed down from heir to heir to heir. I've really liked that inclusion in season 1 because you kind of know that's where it disappears. Is this show is going to what's probably made that disappear from future things? Although obviously Matt Smith now knowing about it, it's very interesting that. There's a moment at the end of the episode where Rhaenyra's like, of the story too? Question mark. Like, there's some good things there, which I will say isn't mentioned at all in Fire and Blood. That was something very exclusive to season 1. And I like that it wasn't a throwaway comment in season 1 of House of the Dragon. It became an integral plot point for the heirs. And I think, should they ever adapt Aegon the First's conquests, that will be fully realized. I have a very controversial opinion on Aegon's conquest is that as much as we all want to see it, it would make for incredibly not necessarily boring television.
I don't want to see Aegon's conquest
of a guy who just turns up with his dragons.
I'd rather see Robert's Rebellion and the proper.
Yeah, I think we're going to get all of them eventually, but Aegon's conquest, should they ever do it, I'm down to watch it. It will look very cool. It will be entertaining, but it only needs to be like a 6 to 8 episode miniseries, no season 2 ever required. And I don't think that really lends itself to TV as well as a show like House of the Dragon, which me and you just spoke about, right? We've got different sides, we've got teams, we've got politics, and it doesn't really have that until after Aegon's conquest, where the politics really starts the development. Bushmaster, but the problem with the prophecy is everyone thinks they are the chosen one. That's also a very good comment.
That's really fitting. I rewatched Blade Runner 2049 today, and that entire film is pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much.
We all thought it was us.
Everyone thinks we were the prophecy, so it fits across kind of narratives and TV and everything like that.
But what I'll say with Rhaenyra, Emma Darcy's performance has been, I think, incredible in this. I think there's a lot of. They've not had as much dialogue as season 1, and if you look at season 1 again, you've got to build these characters up from teenagers, from kids into the adults they are. And at this point, Rhaenyra is mourning the death of one of her 2 firstborn sons that she needs to recover. And her total goal is, I need to avoid war in the realm. I am here to bring peace. Yes, my son's been killed, but I am going to do what I can to avoid it, which led to the Alicent scene, which no one saw coming. Very funny behind-the-scenes photos on Olivia Cook's Instagram of those 2 back together on set. But I'm kind of with some that maybe I think there's a great performance in there. And I don't think the writing, I'm not saying the writing's been bad. I'm not saying it's even been average. No. There's a somewhat stalemate scenario until we're going to get a bit of movement, which again talks about future episodes. So I'm in a weird bubble with Rhaenyra because I'm fully on her side for this entire thing. Like, I'm Team Black through and through. She comes across as a queen, and as she should. She knows she's not got the respect because she's a woman. And I like how the show has dealt with that, her in the war room. Even picking the dragon seeds, the fiercest, most horrific thing is locking all the bastards up, knowing full well they're all gonna probably all die. Maybe they'll all die. Obviously 2 didn't. But I really quite liked that. As dreadful as that is as a leader, in that scenario, would you all do the same? I think a lot of people would. And if it means you get 2 dragon riders out of it, yes, there's a moral conundrum. But for a war, you've basically just, given yourself an extra 2 queens on the chessboard. Do you know what I mean?
It's that Targaryen madness coming through. The whole, a lot of people were Team Daenerys throughout the entire season of Game of Thrones, all the way through. I was supporting her. But then she did murder a bunch of people all the way throughout the series, and we were fine with it. And this is one of those kind of she is really just sending people to their death. They're choosing to be there. It's not like she's rounded them up herself. She's asked them to be there, and people are choosing to be there because they have a hope for a better life. And
did you see? Sorry, did you see the one that looked like Zendaya that everyone was talking about?
No, I didn't know.
It's obviously not her. There was a scene obviously before they start munching and firing away. The camera cuts, and there is obviously it's not even an extra at this point. Like her face in the camera, it literally looks like Zendaya with a Targaryen wig on it, and everyone online just kept talking about Zendaya. Obviously, it's not her, and if anyone watches that scene back, you will actually see it by a mile off, and she really does look like her. But kind of like as you said, it's a bit of Targaryen madness, and she's utilizing her army. And I will say the most badass shot of the entire season was last week, where you've got the 3 dragons and Emma Darcy's performance. What they do, the facial expressions, is massively underrated. It's sometimes not always about a monologue, about speech, about shouting, screaming, whispering, plotting. The physical performance goes a long way, and they're incredible with it.
She's an actress who, throughout the entire series so far, she's been phenomenal. She's just a phenomenal actress in general, Emma Darcy. And I'm going to piggyback off what you said. She wasn't as involved this season as she was maybe towards at least the second half of season 1, where, she took over the reins of the character. But I'd say exactly the same for Alicent. Both of them take a bit more of a backseat role in their kind of reflective ways. They act more as mothers in this season. I know that she is, acting more as a leader and trying to kind of maintain control of, everything that's coming in and going out and everything like that. But with limited screen time, or at least less screen time throughout the series, their presence within their scenes is much greater, which I really appreciate. And their scenes and their moments they have with other characters interacting comes off a lot stronger and comes off as a kind of, not a better performance, but you're not overwhelmed by them being on the screen the entire time. You're given those little kind of powerful nuggets, and they're both strong actors. So, they control every scene that they're involved in, which is fantastic for TV. I think they're not overused. I don't think they're underused as well. I think it's just about right in this series. And, of course, they'll become, characters which will probably get more screen time throughout the season as it goes along. But, I feel like they're very reflective characters in their different houses, respectively, with kind of the amount of screen time and the amount of presence they have on screen in their interactions with other characters.
Yes, I agree. I'm just going to bring up a quick couple of comments. Alicent could have ended the war there, and then she brought a knife, I guess, on 2 occasions.
100%, yeah.
And I don't know if they'll struggle. If they struggle 2 dragon battles per season with the funding, how the hell will they make Aegon's Conquest? That's all there is to it.
It
will be a very expensive miniseries.
Yeah.
Expensive. You wouldn't have much to pay the cast, though. There wouldn't be that many people needed to be in it, given he's conquering the entire realm. But you get
should we talk about one of those dragon battles? Should we talk about the dragon battle of the series? What is now the highest rated episode of House of the Dragon, and one of the coolest moments of the entire series, I'd say, with the Red Dragon and the Gold episode 4, which really is Rhaenys' episode. And just first of all, phenomenal, great episode. Absolutely pulled the stops up, built up to it nicely with a kind of good start to the season, and then what an absolutely explosive episode, not just from kind of the political kind of build up towards the battle taking place, but more on the fact of the actual battle itself and everything going on. You get Kristen Cole's perspective of it, you get Aegon charging into battle, you get it's just Aemon coming in. It's just absolutely mental seeing that on screen, and I'm sure loads of people enjoyed that, and it's been well received as the best episode of the season.
I am with you. I think it's the best episode of the season. I love seeing, I guess we could say for the first time, like dragon combat, dragons in battle. I get why we didn't get that at the end of season 1, because that was the whole point, is that Vhagar is a humongous beast and Luke's dragon wasn't, so ends in one crunch. And what I love of this, they're really building up Vhagar as a villain, even though she's a dragon. And I like what this show has done is the dragons in Game of Thrones were extensions of Daenerys. They were like her children, but the dragons in this show feel like their own characters. I know that is the point of dragons in the show. In the context of Westeros, that these dragons are beings that they're not just an extension of another; they are paired with them. and I like that. And I think this show got to deliver that. And kind of the saddest point with the episode with Rhaenys' death was when Vhagar's like got a neck round Meleese, she turns and gives like a look to Rhaenys, like, "I failed you, like, sorry," and they both know what's happening together. And it made for a quite touching moment. One of my favorite moments of, it's a bit like Dumbledore's death. It was just like this super slow mo,
blankly
going
falling
backwards
from the sky. Yeah,
and I kind of liked it in a sadistic way. The episode itself was incredible. One of the best battle sequences in, what do we call it at this point? The Game of Thrones universe? Like, is there there's gonna be a term for it somewhere? I guess it is technically just Game of Thrones, but
or in the Westeros kind of archives, or
the Song of Ice and Fire. That might be the ultimate box set one day. But the episodes are great. I've always liked Rhaenys. Eve Best has been incredible in the show. She's a great chemistry with everyone she's been on the scene with. I know she's one of the, I don't even want to call her older, but she's one of the more like experienced stage actors within the show. And absolutely love her relationship with Corlys Velaryon, who did get an awful lot to do. We got to meet his two bastards this season. Adam of Hull, one became the Dragon Rider. The other one I forgot the name of, also of Hull. He has probably one of the best acting scenes of the entire season today, where he basically rinses his dad for being a shit dad, and only coming to him now that his highborn children have been killed. It's Adam of Hull, and I forgot the second one's name, but I liked that. But one of her final moments was her telling Corlys, basically legitimize the children. Like, it wasn't her being a Caitlyn Stark. I know people pick on Caitlyn Stark a lot because of the treatment of Jon Snow. I know that she ultimately pivots and realizes what she did was wrong, but I like that in this context of the series, it isn't just my partner's had a bastard, they're scum of the earth. I like that she was like, legitimize them. Like, there's nothing wrong with legitimizing them. If he saved your life, why not? It's the best thing to do. And I've always liked that she's had quite a moral heart, even not killing the Greens back at the coronation season 1. Daemon points that out to her. You could have ended this war before it ever began. That she is almost the first, the first Dragon Rider to fall in this season, and it's a big loss for.
She's also one of the kind of. I know that blood and cheese happens, and you get kids dying. She's probably one of the first major actors outside of outside of Paddy Considine to actually leave the show.
Die in the show
permanently. Die in the show. And
I don't think we'll get her back either. And I like the fact that the Valyrian ship's been renamed to her, which is the queen that never was. And I love it that everyone knew, the series included, she would have made the best queen of Westeros. She was the rightful queen of Westeros. If you really wanted to follow up in it, it came down to that vote. They wouldn't vote her in. And I like that's been an important part of not just this series, but Game of Thrones too. Daenerys, they'll never accept you as a woman, all that sort of stuff. I think she's great. I love her in this. And that's what Game of Thrones does, right? They take away some of your favorite characters and you don't have a say, especially when you think about it. She had that moment for freedom, but she does turn around. She goes for the kill, and we'll talk about the other two dragons from the episode a little bit later on. But a real important episode in terms of the story and where everyone's character arcs have gone since. But I mentioned Lack of Dragon Riders. Do we want to talk about some of the new ones?
Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts on this, actually, as when these guys kept popping up at random episodes, in a pub or his poor daughter. I just kind of want to know, did you sense anything happening, or I'm really curious by the
It's one of those things where you've been watching TV shows for such a long time, you recognize when characters will have importance. And sadly, I had it spoiled for me of who they exactly were to the plot. Kind of spoiled, as someone mentioned, because I go onto forums after the episode, which is stupid knowing that this is a book as well and that information comes out. But I was pretty careful with how doing it. And also I watch, is it Alt Shift X, who does good deep dives of information into each and every episode. And it was mentioned, the introduction of the Dragon Riders. And it was like, oh, they're going to ride the dragons. Okay. And I immediately went, okay, so all of them must be bastards. And, from there, you're able to work it out and you're able to kind of figure out their role later on in the series. It was nice that they weren't just kind of similar traits. They weren't, the same person times 3 and, they're all kind of Valyrian blood or, whether they're, Targaryen blood. And they came from different backgrounds. They have different relationships to their, their kin. And it's interesting how it panned out. And yeah, episode 7 was fantastic for, finding out 2 of them. And I guess the end of, episode 6 was good as well for, seeing Sea Smoke basically go, hey, you're going to ride on top of me. He's just like, ah! But apart from that, it was, yeah, you kind of realize that they are, who they are pretty much immediately. But yeah.
And I like that Hugh Hammers, the one that obviously claimed the Mythor, he would be the grandson of King Jaehaerys, who, for those that don't know, is played by, I forgot the name of the actor, but he was in the original Star Wars. I think he was Bib Fortuna's actor. And he actually, side by side, in that first scene of episode 1, season 1, he actually looks like him. So they absolutely nailed the casting. And I don't think the lineage was confirmed. Within the books, I think it was we just knew these were Targaryen bastards. And the one criticism I have is Adam of Hull claiming Sea Smoke, which I really liked. Corlys Velaryon still pretending like they're not his bastards is really strange. Like,
especially after the stuff with Rhaenys saying legitimize them,
I thought he'd have this pivot, and maybe that will come at a later point in the next series, but I just thought Corlys Velaryon is the kind of character who, the moment one of his bastards picked up a dragon, he'd have been the first to preach it like he's my son. I had Corlys as that type of character, but he hasn't yet. And I'm very curious to see what happens down the line with all of those. And even the finale, Sheepstealer being finally claimed. Now that's one, I'm not going to talk about the character Nettles because there's been murmurs about the show. There was a bastard called Nettles who picked up Sheepstealer. And what they've basically done is they've merged it with Daemon, one of Daemon's children from his first marriage. I quite like that. It seems a bit more interesting. And kind of going back to the whole adaptation thing, it's something Game of Thrones did well. If Game of Thrones wouldn't utilize a character, they might maybe not put them to screen. They might do something else with a different character. And I like what they've done with Sheepstealer. It keeps it more... You've already introduced 3 new dragon riders. You don't need 4 new ones out of the blue. You can have somebody that's got a little bit of lore. You can understand their relationship with Daemon, etc., etc. So I quite enjoyed this, and the episode 7 sequence was great. Like seeing almost a union of dragon people be no, we're out of here. You've desecrated this. I loved, because we know in Game of Thrones there's no dragons. So how are you going to get to where there's dragons being born, being hatched, being treated, being grown up? You need to have the demise of the dragons in a way, which is what House of the Dragon is. That's not a spoiler. That is what they've always built it as.
That is what the show is. The show is, how do we get from here to here where there is no dragons and Targaryens are kind of, shunned away? It's an interesting kind of swing and stuff like that. And I was wondering kind of what triggering points could lead to that. And especially with, all the dragon tamers just walking out. Just because she's raising an army of bastard kind of dragon riders who are not legitimized and everything like that.
The one problem I have is Jace, whose idea it is to have them go on dragon, who, when they find the dragon riders, he's so now venomously against it because of their low-born birth.
Because he's a bastard as well.
And I like the fact they played the angle he turns on his mum to a point, and there is that. And I have liked the character of him. I know we got him into Craig and Stark at the start of the season. I know that Craig and Stark will pop back up at some point in the coming seasons. I have quite liked him in this. I know obviously the actor's, grown 2 years older, so he's going to look a bit different. That's fine. But I think he's been quite convincing for a young actor that was in the first season. I know people laugh about the pouting with him and Aemond as well. But I think they've done a good job of building him up in season 2. He comes across quite credible. He's done a fantastic job at negotiating to get people on Team Black, flying the banners for his mother. I think he's been built up quite credibly, and I like to see what's going to come in the coming years.
Yeah.
His character.
Yes, I agree.
But have I missed anyone out? Obviously, from Team Black yet?
From Team Black, I mean, you've pretty much covered everyone. Yeah, that's everything covered from Team Black. Should we move on to Team Green?
Let's go Team Green. Tayte Saviors. I mean, listen, Alison, again, some people moaning about Alison. You got Olivia Cook, who is a wonderful actress, who, yes, doesn't have, quotes, a lot to do this season. Like Daemon, because, again, within the historical textbooks where her parts have been written, there is nothing more to do. And they've clearly took it upon themselves to match her screen time to Rhaenyra, which I like. That's how the first few episodes were. That's, essentially, you could argue the entire Dance of Dragons comes down to like two friends falling out. And I like that they're going back and forth between each other in this season. But I'm a very big fan of Alison, and one of the best, maybe like, not moments of the season, but one of the sort of best like editing choices, however you want to call it, production design moments, is when she basically gets like pretty much thrown off the council by Aemond, and you just get the camera just slowly zooming in on her for like 2 minutes whilst they're all having a discussion about what they're going to do. The episode was really her losing the Game of Thrones. She was unfortunately born into it. She was pressured into it by her dad. She played the game very well. Not just giving birth to all her kids, but picking names like Aegon for someone to give him a claim, so you give him the name of the conqueror. Yeah. And she's played the game so well. And to be sort of thrown aside because she's a woman is quite poetic, and that sounds massively sexist.
It's what started the series. It's what the show is. It's what's been kind of,
It goes back to Rhaenys. It goes forward to Daenerys. It's not.
It's working now with Rhaenyra as well. Rhaenyra should be the legitimate claim to the throne, but she isn't through complications. But some people don't want to, and they say it in the last episode as well. They don't want to. They want to back a king, not a queen. Which is something that throughout the series has always been a problem, and it's something that, of course, I'm assuming they will address at some point. But I don't know how it ends, and I don't know where it goes from here. So I'm not even going to. I'm not even going to probe in that direction.
What really caught me off guard was when she came to her in this episode. It wasn't the fact she went to her; it was her basically being like, "Come to King's Landing in 3 days." You'll have it. They hate us. This is why. Come to King's Landing. We've got you. It's not a trap. Will you give up your son? Slowly, yes. Ultimately, yes. Which very smartly plays Larys's game in very, very well. I'll talk about them in a bit. But the fact she's willing to trade the son for a son, and there's a great moment with her brother, who's introduced this season as well, where she asks about her third son. For those that don't know, there is a third son. He has been very specifically and carefully put away from being on TV. And that sounds so strange to say, but like what Game of Thrones to do, maybe they'll want to cast an actor at the right point when there's enough. Bit like Austin Butler in Dune Part 2, right? Yes, he would have been in Part 1, but by putting him to Part 2, you give yourself 2-3 more years to cast someone else. You cast someone that's now right at the moment who couldn't have done it 3 years ago. And I do think we're getting that with the other son, but I love the conversation with their brother where it's like, yeah, he's come out, really well. Yours two haven't. Like, that's basically what the conversation is like. He's this, he's that, he's that, he's this. And the two she's raised are terrible people. And
I'd say Aegon isn't the worst in this series. He's like, let's try and see what we can do.
He's still bad, though.
I know,
he still rapes someone.
I know that's bad, but the whole small folk kind of going that route.
He's an innocent, not innocent, but like, he is. I'm not going to compare him to Lance Stroll, but like, he's someone that is. No, maybe the Lance Stroll comparison is actually valid. He's someone that's been born into that family.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the ability to do what his father in this case his mother wants him to do, and he has shown in the job how dreadful he is time and time and time and time again. That once he finally gets the nerves to go to battle, he gets absolutely twatted by the other person in the scene.
Yeah,
And
For those who
that's the
don't
story
know,
of Aegon and Aemond.
Lance Stroll, even though he sounds like a character that would be in Game of Thrones, is not from Game of Thrones. He is a Formula One driver. He is what you would call a page driver who is there just because of the money.
Well, no, but his dad owns the company. There's
His
a
dad
difference.
owns, pretty much.
The whole team is full of like dreadful engineers and electricians and stuff like that. And you know they've gone from the third best car to the fifth nearest, sixth, seventh. But sorry, it's getting to the F1 chat. But no, it's an apt. Maybe there's a hidden Stroll that's actually like a world class driver, just not being given the car.
Yeah, maybe. One thing I say which was missing from Team Green this season was Otto. He's in it at the start. We love Otto Hightower. We love Rhys Ifans, fantastic actor.
Eyeball Paul.
But he's kind of almost written out of the series. He loses the Game of Thrones as well. Once again to out of control kids who have too much kind of blood boiling hot and stuff like that. To the point where in the season finale we just see him in a cage for some strange reason out of nowhere, which is a bit odd. But I didn't like the fact that we weren't given too much screen time to him. And I don't know whether he's a character that we're just not going to see again or whether he's a character we're going to have more from. But I feel like we've lost a big actor there who hasn't been killed. He's just been, told you're no longer part of the game. Goodbye. Kind of like go back to Highgarden and just, stay out of it kind of thing.
I am with you. We lost a lot with him gone. And I think that sort of validates the failures of Aegon, that he's too thick to realize the mastermind of him being on the throne is his granddad, who was the Hand for many, many years, who had his daughter marry the king, who injected
put himself in the right position.
Yeah, he played the Game of Thrones very well. He's almost a bit of a Tywin Lannister type. If you really drill it down, he's played the Game of Thrones for varying sides, and he's got in at the most finite moment. But yeah, he doesn't anticipate his idiotic grandson in this case. And it's one of my favorite moments of the series is when he just goes in on Aegon. What a genius plan. We've sent the twin to go and kill her. He's like, what? And that happened twice in a week with the Acolyte and House of the Dragon. I know you haven't spoken about the Cardinal twins. What a fucking fantastic fight. What a harrowing sequence as well.
Great sequence,
Great, yeah. And it was the best brother bowl we've had in the Game of Thrones verse, I guess we can say.
That's a shame. That is a massive shame that is the best.
Maybe should have just speared him through the fire. But I love Otto. I never thought I used to despise him, but I love Rhys Ifans. I can never unthink of Eyeball Paul. I've seen him from that as a young age, and I do think that him popping up at the ending in montage in a prison cell caught me off guard. I don't know what that is or for, what that's about. Whether someone's playing a game elsewhere that we've not been looked at or we've been told about. I'm curious to know what's going to happen to him. And I didn't think we'd get that out of him. I didn't think we'd see him again until a later date at some point down the line. So it's certainly left me with a couple of questions with Otto. Who I don't have questions for is what's happened to Aegon II.
Face melting things happened.
Harvey Two-Face then. Yeah,
that's the one.
He got drunk and cocky. He flew into battle and he got yeeted by his own brother.
Yeah.
Aemond's going in for listen. I mean, we said how good episode 4 was. The moment in which he, is drunk, he's berating his brother for being the same prostitute as before. He berated the brother as a kid. Like, Aemond has always, I would even say like second child syndrome. He's always been tormented by his brother, and he knew the one moment he'd ever get in his life to take him out, he did it. And what's even better, in that same episode, as Kristen Cole walks out, Aemond's got his sword drew, ready to make sure his brother's dead. But he doesn't because of Kristen Cole. But I love, without turning this into chat on Aemond, because we'll get to him, I love what the series has done, and Aegon, who I think is despicable, you feel sorry for as the season gets on, that when he wakes up in bed and Aemond's there and he starts like grabbing the bed like in fear, that he's in fear of his brother for the first time. And even Lara Strong, the creepiest, most distrustworthy foot fetish club foot man there is encouraging him to start being smart, to be wiser, to not take the is it milk of the poppy where it like helps them heal, and
it helps. It takes away the pain. It's opium basically.
And Larys is playing the Game of Thrones again. That he might have had it with Alicent. Aemon saw through him on day one, and now he's going for the brother. And by taking the brother out of the equation, for the sake that he thinks Aemon's going to come and kill him, now he's pissed off. I like that. There's, I think it's is it Tom Glencarney, the actor? He was in Dunkirk. I think he's been quite not necessarily underrated because he hasn't had as much to do, but he did a great job in building him up to be this sort of detestable, arrogant, cocky kid who's now, a fragile,
but maybe wiser character. And I don't know how they're going to develop him going on, whether we're never going to see him again or whether he's going to become an interesting part going forwards. But the state where we leave him at the end of the series, he is definitely a character making wiser decisions and maybe valuing his life a bit more, and maybe, realizing, hold on, I'm not going to win the game if I'm dead. I'm not going to win the game if my brother's there as a constant threat of death, and, I'm sat here in this bed, and you're in a vulnerable position. And he realized that, and he's like, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to take this deal that, Larys is putting up on the table, and, we'll get out of here, and then I can kind of figure out what to do. Because he's still got naming rights, at least, hasn't he? I know that with the war coming and everything that's going to happen in the next series and everything like that, it'll probably pass on to Aemon as kind of the named heir and stuff like that. And they'll just say, oh, yeah, he's disappeared, he's gone, or he's been killed, or he's been kidnapped, or they'll try and blame the others. But, it puts him in a strong position to come back at some point and at least have a legitimate claim at that stage.
And he is really the antagonist to Rhaenyra. It's her younger brother. He's the firstborn male of the family from the second marriage of the series. And kind of what I did forget to say about Otto is Otto getting dismissed as the hand for his long-term strategy of, sending the Lannister out to work with the other armies to try and break the blockade. That's what's happened now. Technically, Otto's plan is what is actually working.
George, think about it. It's political negotiations to get rid of a blockade.
I know. That's what I think of it. Thankfully, there's no awful stereotypical voices on the Essos armies that came through. But the Otto's plan ultimately worked, and maybe that's what brings them into it a little bit later on. But we've mentioned Aemon a lot. I just have to say I absolutely loved him in season 1. Deranged lunatic. He's got everything to show. And in this series, it's Ewan Mitchell that plays him. Is incredible. He is not just pouting like Jace, which is very funny, but I'll be honest, like as awful as he is, makes a great king. Even those that failed and started killing civilians, rather than kill them, he sent them to the wall. And it's like, like someone that knows Westeros. And he's been doing all the strategic battle plans and whatnot. And I really like Aemon. I think as far as antagonist goes, he's been superb in this series. That he is the smarter, older, well, he's not older, he's younger, but he's the smarter, younger brother of Aegon, but he's the brains behind their organization. And the whole trap at Rook's Nests, the moment Aemon spotted Aegon going out, and he sort of kept Aegon, just wait a little bit. Let's. He thought, there we go. That moment, that's my opportunity, and he took it. And Prince Regent, he likes to call himself, and he'd like to call himself king, and maybe that's part of the plan. Who knows? But he, as far as an antagonistic threat goes, he has been the antagonist of the season. His mother's scared of him. His brother's scared of him. His sister, Helena, is not scared of him, which I absolutely love.
Yes.
And the only person to be able to say no to him so far and get away with it. But he is an outright Game of Thrones. I wouldn't say a traditional Game of Thrones villain. He's a proper old school villain. He's not proper, hiding.
Like,
he's
mustache twirling kind of
Scar out the Lion King.
He's got an eye patch, and he just. I said it at the start. He looks like an anime villain. He looks like something's drawn straight out of a comic book, and his actions throughout the entire series are so kind of violent, as if he needs to get revenge on everyone. Everyone has wronged him. He needs to get revenge on everyone. And it's nice that we saw that development in the first series as to why he became that way. Constantly bullied, losing the eye, learning how to fight, going and bonding himself to the biggest dragon and making sure that he had something in his corner, things like that. It's all building up, and now that he's got that thirst for power, he is pretty much unstoppable. Only one person in the entire series said no to him, which is crazy. I feel like he had the most screen time this season. I feel like his story was given probably the most to flesh out, and his presence on screen, his rise from kind of sitting in the background and being just the kind of the lonely sword to just go off and cause chaos, and then suddenly that retaliation, and especially after episode 4, his presence becoming even more kind of wickedly evil. I really enjoyed the performance, and I really want to see kind of where they take him and how low can he stoop. How horrific can he be? How brutally can he kind of murder the next person? It'd be fantastic to see.
Yeah, and he's got a list, and we all know what we're waiting on. The season 1 standoff with Aegon and Daemon. It feels like it's coming one day, and I think when they do cross paths, because they've been kept away from each other so much, and the fact that from day one, Aemond has wanted to go to Harrenhal. He said straight away, that's what we need to take. And that was also Daemon's same strategy, except Daemon acted upon it rather than let the other. They're two minds thinking alike, both in it for themselves, the throne, but now we have a devoted Daemon to Rhaenyra versus Aemond, who certainly isn't going to move his devotion to his brother. That time has passed, and I think when they come together, we'll be looking at an all-timer.
Yeah, 100%. I guess the only other person we have to talk about is Helena, and quietly going about her business throughout the series. Of course, the really fantastic acting in episode 1 with the whole blood and cheese, kind of everything that was going on with that. The fact that the horrific kind of choice that she was placed under, and everything like that, the trauma that comes with kind of the rest of the series as well, that you kind of see her in the background just kind of going about her business and trying to just get on with her life, and being her son's body being paraded through the streets, and her having to kind of the riots in the streets as well, and everything like that. She cannot grieve, she cannot get over it, and yet in the background we still got her having those kind of visions and those kind of thoughts towards the future, being a seer. I think a very complex character. I feel like it's going to become even more complex as the series goes on. But overall, just a fantastic performance in general. And I wish there was more time to her character, as she was really interesting to kind of watch on the screen.
I really enjoyed her. Is it Fierce Saban that's played has been great in it, and dealing with the whole sequence of watching her son being killed, and she's just like cradling like herself, and
it's the walking in on her mum.
Her mum, and she's just not bothered.
No.
Yeah, and she's like, they've done
she probably saw a vision of it. Like,
well, this is it now, and I know that the vision with Daemon today ends with her obviously not being a Thread Raven, but some people think, is she a seer? Is she what were those things? No, that's a green, so that's something different. But it's one of those where George R. R. Martin spoke about how different her portrayal is to what he'd written it, and he'd loved it for it. He'd spoke about it very openly that what they've been able to do with her in these seasons has been really good. And her knowing what Daemon did, she obviously is a seer of sorts. I don't know the specific terminology within Game of Thrones, but it is that it's not like a warg. It's not someone that can see the past like the Thrive Raven. It is someone that just can see all things. I know that Daenerys had those visions. I know Prince Aegon the Conqueror had those visions. It has passed down in Targaryen lineage, and I quite like that they've waited until now to officially reveal it. And her refusing to go to war with Dreamfire, I absolutely loves. So like from after the moment where the civilians like try and jump her and Alicent and stuff, she basically never steps foot outside of the keep again. That's my understanding, and I like that they've stuck with that. So I mean, it's been one episode of K, but I like that what they did is like she'd always go out on her dragon there. Like her time with her dragon was like a really big thing for her. She's almost like not the hippie of the lot, but she's not in it for the war. She's not going to rise to war to raise the banners. She's one of the innocent parties in the whole thing, and I think she had a great episode today in which she spoke about, saying I was much happier before I was a queen, and she's one of the ultimate victims of the show, and I really like her performance and the funeral, like parading around the son, and she was great. The performance was great, and I do hope we get a bit more from it. What the show's been able to do is take characters who might not have anything happen in the books and develop them, give them screen time, give them dialogue, have them act, bring them up in other stories. And this is one of the defining examples of someone I'm glad has had that development. And yet she's had one of the worst rosters of picking what son to have killed, and they still went with the other one.
I find it fascinating that we've been giving really good kind of response and feedback for every single actor here in the show. There isn't a single bad actor in the show from the main cast. But at the same time, I think this series has been a downgrade to season 1. And I'm coming off the back of this series not only wanting more, but saying there's a lot missing here. So
it's the structure for me. They've nailed, and I wouldn't even say it's the first 8 episodes are great as an 8 episodes, but I'm sort of I know ultimately, right, it's the defining read. We want more. That's great. We're gonna watch the next series. That's great. But it doesn't feel like a season. What's this dreadful new Netflix trend of a part 1, part 2, part 3 for everything? Part 1, part 2, 6 months, part blah blah blah. I know this is 2 years. This is a whole season. Great, I'm with you. But I am saying this series really needed 2 more episodes, and we'd be having the same discussion now, but we'd just have a lot more detail. Would have resolutions. It doesn't feel like Damon at Harrenhal picking his loyalty. I don't feel like I've seen many resolutions to events of the season. It feels like it's further set up for what is to come, and knowing what is to come is great. It's exciting, and it's probably exciting for you off that It's like a Christopher Nolan montage, wasn't it? Like everything was in place for what's to come next. That's kind of how season 1 finished.
Yeah, we've got written down here 3 big events that took place in the series. We've got Blood and Cheese, episode 1. We got Rhaenys and the kind of Dance of the Dragons, and then we got the Vision at the end. That's 3 big things per episode. If you've got maybe 1 episode to set each of those up, that's only 6 episodes of the series. There's 8 episodes here. And I know we were talking about filler before and not wanting too much filler and making sure that the series is kind of planned out. And I find it very interesting that in series 1 of Game of Thrones and series 2 of Game of Thrones, there wasn't a single filler episode, but there are episodes where not much took place. But the dialogue and the character development and the building blocks were so well put in place. I think this is kind of a curse of a good first season. The first season did such a good job of putting the characters in the right place for this series to continue, that it decided that maybe we don't need as much development this series, but characters should always be developed. I feel like the characters that, were really developed this series was maybe Daemon. And past that, there isn't really much development character-wise, with kind of what we knew about them beforehand. Aemond was a violent person who could go off the handrails. At the end of the series, he's a violent person who can go off the handrails. Alicent is losing control of the house and losing control of her sons. At the end of the series, she has lost control of the house and lost control of her sons. Rhaenyra is trying to be queen and, of course, is going to be grieving. At the end of the series, she's kind of in the same situation, but at least she's got like a few dragon riders behind her now. There's not much development character-wise, even if it's well acted, and even if we enjoy kind of the stories they go on and everything like that. It does need those extra 2 episodes, but it needs deeper writing. It needs a bigger injection of help towards these characters to make us still interested in them, to really follow their stories, and really, if it is a setup series, to really set up how those characters are going to deal with the situations to come. Because instead, what we've left with is some cool situations happening, at least 3 big things taking place. You could throw maybe the dragon bonding as another cool thing that happened throughout the series. Apart from that, we've got 8 episodes, and the characters are pretty much in the same place they started the series in. In fact, past episode 1, most of them are even in the same location as where they were when the series kind of, started. So it's disappointing, that fact, even if we've given kind of, good comment to how they've acted and everything like that. And it's like you said, it's down to the structure, it's down to the writing, it's down to kind of keeping people interested, but not leaving us on a cliffhanger, giving us the story in full, and then moving on to the next chapter, because this feels like a book that's missing 10 pages.
Yeah, and sort of where I'm going, that is a Game of Thrones comparison, that Game of Thrones is such a sizable cast, to put as an understatement. people would get the development these guys have had across 3-4 seasons, not one. However, when you're writing a story that's primarily one house split in two, it's not tricky to do it, but it's limited by what they can do, and that's what makes it frustrating is the structure of the season. And it's great they've announced the season 3. I've read the statement. They actually asked Dan Cullen how many episodes, and he said he hasn't confirmed the HBO yet. Because I imagine that's now going to be a bit of a thing where people want to know how many episodes are going to be before, they turn around and say it's 8 for season 3. I'm like, great. You can make predictions left and right for what you think you're going to see happen or what could happen if you're familiar with those. But it really comes down to what's the overall story. And I do think it can be told in 4 seasons, but I feel I'm not like reserving judgment because this is a season 2 review. I'm with you. Like, I feel like we're missing stuff, and at the same time, I have complete faith in the production side of things that season 3 will elevate season 2, but it makes it so much harder that you've got to wait another 2 years for that. And if it doesn't happen, then great. And kind of with the ending, I keep going back to is it season 6 ending with Daenerys sailing to Westeros, or is that season 7?
That is season 6 because it's after.
It feels like that, right? Finally we're here. We got the finally we're here because it was season 6, not season 2. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where a couple of my little things come in it. But yeah, I'm with you. Like as we said, the performances have been fantastic, and I think the writing on these characters has been very good. But it's we didn't talk about Alice Rivers, who came and who was great, and they've introduced a lot of very good new characters. But there are certain things that I just feel nothing hasn't not worked. It's been left a wanting more. That sounds like a Mario. It's not meant to be. And I'm very eager to get there. And part of me wonders, I'll revisit this in 2 years' time. So try not to forget. The worry is that season 2 could... I'm going to be really careful how I say this. There could be an ending to season 2 which could have been too familiar to a season ending of 1 or 3.
Okay.
I can't say anything more than that. But they are at risk. Again, I'm going to wait for season 3 to understand. Because if it isn't, if it's like way in, something happens or something doesn't happen, then it's like, okay. So I'm on knife's edge saying this to really careful how I say it, but yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I get it.
And I'd say this. Even the ending of episode 7 would have worked. Not the dragon pit, like the ending, right? Rhaenyra with the 3 dragons. That would have been I think, better ending shot than what we have. I know it wouldn't have worked because we needed what came after, but it feels like the scene of Alicent and Rhaenyra at the end has felt not forced, but that's felt like it's too obvious of the goalposts. I feel like it's explained too much.
Episode 8 have been a good season 3 first episode? Thinking back on it, because I think the big thing that people are talking about is it's not a good finale, but would it be a good season opener instead?
It would be. You'd have to have You'd have to have had Rhaenyra and Daemon patch up in episode 7, or make that episode 8, etc. But yeah, the ending montage. Certainly, if I'm really truthful, the Larys Aegon would be great at the start of season 3. Alicent and Rhaenyra start of season 3 would be great. And I wondered, they might have written all this. They might have a 4-season, or not even 4 seasons. They might have like a 30 to 40 episodes binder or something.
This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it.
And they might have been trying to think, but can we end it like this? Can we not? Can we not? Because they've switched a couple of things around in minor detail. They've switched a few things around in terms of placement on the show, and that's not a bad thing. But I definitely feel they're taking a different approach to it. And for me personally, I can't. It's so frustrating to say I can't judge a season until the next season's out. But I feel like I'm at that level where I need season 3. But that's also not a worry, not just desperation. But then I'm like, shit, am I going to have the same thoughts? Am I going to get into season 3 and be like, fuck me, we were 1 episode away from this? Like, do you know, that's what I'm also worried about. So I'm just going to lay faith to the showrunners that they've got a 4-season arc. and that they have nailed it, and I am wrong, and they are going to get it all right and patched up and be hunky-dory. A neat bow on season 4, because Game of Thrones did get a neat bow on season 4, but not a neat bow on the whole show.
No, it definitely didn't.
That's a very weird way of me getting myself out of trouble for potentially saying anything.
Yes, no, that's fair. I don't have any predictions. My predictions would be basically more dragons, more things. I don't know who's going to win in the end. I get the feeling that Daemon's going to probably come out on top. I thought throughout the entire series that he was going to finally betray, and it would be a massive shock that he, basically just was a third party against his entire family. I still feel like that maybe some way that it may end. I feel like the High Towers and House Green is probably not going to be a thing at the end, because it is, it's House of the Dragon.
It's House Targaryen. It's House Targaryen, not House Green.
I know, but everyone remembers the red Targaryen flag. When it gets to Game of Thrones, not the green one. So you know that the greens are probably not.
And Hightower's green as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I do wonder how Hightower is able to kind of maintain.
Bit on the nose, isn't it?
Rich and yeah, a little bit.
Otto getting his daughter to change the color of their banners to green. Very on the nose. It'd be like making you change your football helmet colours. Okay, here's my prediction for season 3. This is for book readers, and it's not a spoiler. You don't need to cover your ears.
Yeah.
My prediction for season 3, I'm going to say it in bullet points. Battle of the Gullet, which at this point, I've told you is going to happen. You've seen the boat montage. It's happening. I'm not going to give any details of that, but we're going to get Battle of the Gullet. We're going to get King's Landing. That's all I'm saying. That's what Rhaenyra spoke about, right? They should come here in 3 days. I'm not saying she goes there in 3 days. I'm not saying she doesn't either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that. And the one that's going to make people wet is God's Eye. That's my prediction for season 3. And the thought of God's Eye not being into season 3. God's Eye, I think, needs to be the end of season 3. And in season 4, the final season, I will say the Dragon Pit. I want the Dragon Pit to be at the start of season 4, not end of season 3. You're like, what the fuck's you on about? There is not spoiler. And then obviously the other parts of season 4 is the ending, as we all not know, but the ending. Don't need to break that down for spoilers. That is spoilers.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing for me. Like, I'd revisit in 2 years. God's Eye has to end season 3. For me, for visually, it'll work better as a season, not finale, but like an ending to a season. Like that what God's Eye is. And then Dragon Pit 4, season 4. I'm worried, going back to what I said at the start, that they might try and do too much in season 3 and chuck in all these things every episode. But the best thing about Game of Thrones is when you had those big moments, you then get an episode to settle down, to see the aftermath. For people, one of the best visual moments of this entire season was them skipping the battle. Was it the Blackwoods? When they're arguing, and then you cut to the massacred arms. Fantastic. That's like early Game of Thrones when they'd avoid the war by being smart, and this did that. So that's sort of my random prediction for those that may know. If you don't know, what I've said isn't spoilers. Just don't Google it on Game of Thrones Wikipedia. But yeah, I mean, listen, if I just mention my thoughts, I've very much enjoyed this season. It's been a great season of TV. There's been a lot of TV in the last few months, and I do think this is the best show I've watched. I am just, as I said, I'm in that weird catharsis. Maybe it's an overreaction. Maybe because it aired this morning. Maybe because it's day one. Haven't had too much time to think. But I just feel that there's a missed opportunity with not making this season 10 episodes.
And I completely agree with that.
Lovely. Do you have anything else to add, or I kind of don't? I'm all House Dragoned out at that time.
Yeah, I'm House of Dragon out as well. In fact, I'm probably TV'd out for a bit. I will going back to watching, like I did today, watching long films.
I've got films to watch. I've got so many films to watch.
I've got so many films to watch as well.
But yeah, and that's a lovely plug, because there are films coming out, people. There's Alien Romulus next week. There's, oh God, Trap's out in America, but not here. Wait for this one. The UK review embargo for Trap is this Friday, the 9th of August. Even though the film is out in America already. Don't know how that works, but that's how they did it. Borderlands is out this week. Hooray. Said no one. But if you want something great to watch this week, folks, Spider-Man 2 is back in UK cinemas for this weekend. So revisit the Raimi verse at your wish. But there is going to be more reviews. And when we've got reviews to announce to talk about, we'll put them on social media, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. Go find us on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And of course, if you're not watching this live, thank you for sticking with us. Go grab us. You can get us a comment below. We'll reply to all of those comments in the chat. So this is going to do it for today's review. Tayte, thank you so much for watching. Everyone at home, thank you. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.